Enjoying WordCamp?
Yeah.
All right. All right, well, I'm Chris Edwards. I am a web developer. I've been doing that for about 17 years. I'm also a digital marketer, also doing SEO as well. Been doing that for about 10, 11 years or so now. I'm a complete analytics nerd. Any of you who know me know I just love to look at analytics all day and look at data. So if you've got any analytics questions, ask me. And this talk will kind of touch a little bit on analytics as well. And I'm also one of the WordPress Orlando organizers. And of course, you're here, so you know what that is. So we'll jump right in. And we're going to talk about what this talk really is. It's called Designing for Conversions. Sometimes I call it Conversion Rate Optimization 101. Basically, I'm going to teach you ways to do conversion rate optimization on your site. And this is basically a process of diagnosis, hypothesis, and testing. So this is going to be, how do we figure out what's best for your site and what's going to generate the most conversions for your website. And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to walk through the whole process. I do have a little bit to get through, but we will have plenty of time left over afterwards for questions. And so feel free to, if you can hold your questions towards the end. I probably am going to answer it through the presentation. If not, ask it at the end, and I'd love to answer it. So we'll jump in. So what we're going to talk about is the first step that you have to do when we are looking at making a website convert better, right? And so our first thing is going to be kind of getting into that mindset. And this is where I kind of come and say, don't be scared. Don't be afraid to fail. You will fail. You want to fail, because failing is a test result. You want to keep an open mind as you do this. So the biggest thing is, as you dive in, don't close yourself into one. Like, I've done this before with tests where I look at a test and I'm like, I want this one to win, so I'm going to focus on this one winning, versus keeping an open mind and realizing what you want to win may not win. Keep an open mind and let the test tell you what's going on. Also, we want to figure out, how do we do more with less? And then obviously we got to follow the data. The biggest thing is, and I'm going to quote a line from Frozen, let it go. Or a song, I don't know. This kid watches that. But you got to just let the test go, is what we're, let it run, let it do its thing. And we're going to talk about those tests, but you're going to let that test tell you exactly what needs to happen. So the next thing we got to do is we got to start with a plan, and we're going to dive into all of these items more in depth. But we've got to create. We got to create a plan. We're not going to test just to test. You're not just going to jump on your site and just start randomly picking things to test because you heard this talk and said, hey, I'm going to start A/B testing. So I'm going to A/B test everything I want, and there's nothing but no reason behind it. I'm just going to do it. So we're going to have to define our metrics, create some goals. We want to start big, refine it down to something small, and we got to know why we're running these tests. What is the purpose behind each test? What is the goal we're trying to make happen? And again, all this we're going to dive in more in depth. But part of this is we want to create a backlog before we even start testing. So what we're going to do is, when we're going to be testing our website, we want to plan out what our tests are going to be. Plan out some future tests, because tests end early all the time. Some tests go long, some tests go early. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and plan out our funnel so that when the test does end early, we can immediately jump into the next test. We got to be ready to switch out tests. Tests may just not be working. Tests may actually be causing problems. There's sometimes a test that you build just because of JavaScript issues and all that just is not working. You may have to just table that test until you can rebuild it and throw another test into place. You don't want to stop testing, because testing is a process that can take a long time, so you want to always have different tests running. And we'll talk about that even as well. So the next thing, we're going to also talk about the different types of data we collect. So there's qualitative and there's quantitative, and we're going to talk about quantitative first. So here's where we start to get into really the more analytical portion. So quantitative data is data that you can collect through different tools. This is going to be how many people are going to your website, the numbers basically. So this is going to be things you collect from different tools. tons of tools out there. I'm sure most of you all use Google Analytics. HEATMAPS is another big one. Mixpanel, which is up at the top. Mixpanel is another big one out there. These are all different testing tools that are analytic tools you can put on your website to really test your website and see what's going on, where the traffic is, and so forth. So the most common one is going to be Google Analytics. It's easy to install. You can track goals and events. Everybody uses it, I'm sure. How many in here use Google Analytics? All right. Most of the room use Google Analytics. Just out of curiosity, anyone here use KISS? All right. Mixpanel? All right, great. Next part's going to be a little boring for you all on the KISS Mixpanel side, but we'll talk through it because it's the same principles as well. Google Analytics, if you all are using it, you already noticed, it's free to use. There are more advanced ones, and so this is where you have Mixpanel and KISS come in. These integrate into most A/B testing tools, and they integrate directly into them. They are more for if you have a full-blown app and you want to really track down to the data level, you want to track user data, things like that. You can use Mixpanel to track that information. So when we're tracking, we haven't even gotten to the point where we're going to talk about the test yet because we're still getting to the point of even starting our testing. So we've built the backlog. Now what we need to do is we've got to build our funnel because we have to understand what the funnel is. So your funnel is going to be, your conversion funnel is the path that people take to make whatever conversion that you're looking to have happen on your website. So whether it be them signing up, buying a product, any of those different items, there's a funnel. It starts out usually with the sign-up page, then maybe they put their payment information in, and then there's a success page. That's a simple conversion funnel, right? So we want to first build our funnel. So I'm going to show you kind of the different methods that some of these build funnels, just so you can kind of see. We're going to kind of go through KISS and Mixpanel, or KISS really fast because I think most of you guys don't use it. But with KISS, this is what a funnel looks like. And most tools will have a similar type of item, but you can see here, you have viewed homepage, viewed sign up page, and signed up. And you can see 6.2% went on to the sign up page, 72% went from there to the to actually completing a sign up. Now the cool thing is, this is what I was talking about with some panel, or some of these actually integrate directly into one of your testing tools. So with KISS, for example, you have your experiments that you're running inside your testing tool. This could be through Optimizely or VWO. It integrates with both of those. But you can actually select which experiment, and you can see your different experiments you're running. And you can see the conversion rate between these. So we could see that create a free account and get started, that when we got to the second step of the funnel, that create a free account generated 6.8% coming over to the view sign up page versus get started only had 5.6. But then we can see in the end how many people ultimately ended up converting. So if you're looking at just the first part, you see create free account, you'd think, hey, that's the winner. But when you look at the ultimate goal at the end, actually get started is the one who won because it had a slight 4.5 versus 4.4%. It's very small. I would have ran this test a little longer to find out. Actually, I think this was a test that was actively running. But you can see you don't want to always take the results first without really analyzing them. So now for Google Analytics. Google Analytics sucks when it comes to building funnels. It has a way you can build funnels if you're using page path goals. If you're using event-based, you can't build a funnel unless you create fake page views and track those. So what we do is we actually recommend a tool called Hotjar. Hotjar allows you to build these nice looking funnels that you can track, and they have paid versions and they have free versions. Free version I think allows you to track 1 or 2 funnels, and then the paid version has unlimited, and it's priced based off of how many people come to your website. But this is what the Hotjar one looks like. You can see it's nice and clean. Google Analytics, I think I do show that one later, and it's not as clean. But this is definitely a tool. We'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, but this is a tool that I would recommend to build your funnel. So we can kind of see here, as we go through, we have our home page, we have product. Product has a drop off of 20%. And then we get to our cart. Our cart has a 51% drop off rate. Checkout only has a 1.7% drop off rate. So if we were going to run some tests, we'd want to find that choke point. And for example, on this one, that would be our cart. We have a huge drop off rate there. That's where we'd want to test to see how we can decrease that drop off rate. The other thing we want to do is collect qualitative data. So quantitative data is obviously it's the numbers. It's really diving in, understanding those. Qualitative data, on the other hand, this is going to be where we actually ask you and get true feedback from our users. So the biggest thing is we saw that drop-off point on the funnel. We want to ask questions at that drop-off point, because me just seeing that's the quantitative number. I'm seeing there's a drop-off, but I have no idea why anyone's dropping off. So that's where we step into our next step and go, all right, that's great. That's where they're all dropping off. Let's ask them a question. Let's do an on-page survey. This is one way you can do this. So what we can do is we can ask you, hey, how can we help? Are you looking for something we don't have? Do you need assistance? Popping one of these up, and this is actually, funny enough, also Hotjar does this. Hotjar, you'll hear me talk about it a lot because there's a lot of other tools, and we'll talk about those. But when it really comes down to it, Hotjar is going to be the tool that's going to give you the most items for your buck. Every other item you're going to end up paying for like 8 different services, versus Hotjar kind of combines them all together. So this is a survey. We're asking questions on, for example, this is like a pricing page, asking questions on there to see, are we not offering something you want to offer or you want to purchase? These are different tools. Hotjar, I say, is a free option. I believe they still do have free, but it's very limited now. They've kind of changed their pricing recently, but they still have a free version. They have a version that's not very expensive. Qualaroo is I believe it's the most expensive one. Olark is kind of in the middle. Both of those are paid ones. There are some free-based ones. There are also some WordPress plugins you can use to do it. So just kind of look and see which one works best for you. But these are my favorite ones to use myself, because they're not actually hosted on the site, and they are very quick and easy to change out. So then the other thing is heat maps. Heat maps are a great tool because you can actually see what people are doing. People still read with their mouse for the most part. Now with touchpads on computers come in, people don't use the touchpads as often, but you can often see people who still have a mouse, what they're reading based off of where their mouse is sitting. So you can build heat maps based off of this. This is a heat map over here, so we can kind of see where people are hovering. You can also do click maps, but we can also with these see how far down the page they're scrolling, what are they looking at, what are they not looking at. If you've got a call to action and nobody's looking at your call to action, then we need to do something about that call to action. That's our first test that we're going to do, is how do we get them to pay attention to our main call to action if they're clicking something over here. You also can turn on click mapping, and you can actually find where people are clicking stuff that isn't really there. This happens a lot with if you're let's say you're a developer here, you build a WordPress plugin, and you have on your website a bunch of screenshots of your plugin, and your screenshot has buttons in it because your product has buttons in it. You can watch the click map and see on your images, you will see people are clicking on your image thinking it's a button they can click. You can find that and figure out maybe how can you change that. Maybe when they hover over it, it changes into some text that talks about that. Or you can figure out how do you fix that. Or you can say maybe I should stick a call to action here because they're clicking on it. Heat maps, this is something we like to talk about. It's kind of a cool study that was done. They put this really crazy hat or cap on you, and it has these things that look at your eyeballs. It's done at universities. They're not done through watching a mouse. And they watch eye tracking to see where you look. And this is an interesting ad that kind of shows you when you're building out like your hero sections or any kind of images, always have your models look at your product. So here's an example on your right, my left. You'll see she's looking right at you. So everybody kind of goes from looking at the caption to looking at her, and then they just kind of trail off, right? Versus when she's looking at the product, people come down, they look over at her next, then they look to see what she's looking at. So very interesting idea is you always want to have your models looking towards whatever you're trying to drive people towards. You don't want them looking off the page, looking away, because people look for them on your site for direction of where they should be going and what they should be looking at. And then we have visitor recordings. If you don't know that you're being tracked on the internet and everything you do, I'm sorry to scare you guys, but everything you do is being tracked on the internet. You can actually record people's sessions on your site, and what you're recording is you're recording where their mouse is moving on the site. And you're recording where they're scrolling, what they're doing, those different type of things. You can do that through Hotjar. Visitor recordings are really great because you can see what exactly, watch in live time, not live like while they're doing it, but like you can watch in real time what their mouse movements are. You can see where they're pausing, because where they're pausing, and you can look where they paused at, could be something where maybe you asked them to go, maybe they had to go look up some information, or you didn't provide them enough and they had to go look for something else somewhere. You can also find people that are lost. We had somebody who couldn't find the terms of service once on a page. And it literally, we were able to see that they were searching for it by watching them just kind of move their mouse aimlessly through the website. And you can also see how long did they navigate through your site. Or watch how they navigated through your site. So you can watch which menu system they use. You may have created this really awesome menu system, and everybody goes down to the bottom of the page and uses that menu. And maybe that means we should make a change to the menu system, right? Tools to do this: Hotjar, ClickTail. These are all paid. Crazy Egg and Specklet. And Specklet's really good. I like Specklet. Crazy Egg does some pretty cool stuff for heat maps. But Hotjar, again, does really good heat maps and also does the recordings. So again, I should get Hotjar to pay me for being up here because I talk about their product. I actually reached out to them to see if they could send me some swag, and I just didn't get it in time. But no, their tool really is great. And even though they did kind of raise the prices recently, I still think it has value at the prices that they set it to, because they still have the starting tier, I think, at $29. And it covers, I think, 10,000 page views, which I'm sure most of y'all's sites, you know, if you're getting more than 10,000 page views, hopefully you're monetizing that and you can afford it a little bit more. But, you know, $29 to do all these different things on there is really good. This is kind of actually talking about that. All those different tools cost like a ton of money, and Hotjar is actually pretty cheap. It used to be unlimited sites and like unlimited everything for $29, and then they went to the model of setting a certain amount. So if you have an old account, you're grandfathered in, so see if you can log back into it if you're already paying for it. All right, so all that was really just, we're still not to the testing part. So we've now identified areas that we need to focus on. We've identified what we need to test through our heat maps. We've looked at all this data, and we kind of really sat down. And this is where you have to collect all that data together and think about, and this is where you get to be creative. You get to go, okay, well, I'm noticing my hero section's not getting as much as it should, and I'm noticing on this page we're not getting a whole lot, we have a lot of drop-off, so let's test on this page. Let's test changing that call to action. So now we're going to go back to that backlog that we originally created, and we're now going to update it because we have a little bit better information of the test. So we're going to update that with all the other information that we've already found. And then now we can start the testing. So this is where it gets fun. There's two different tools, Optimizely and VWO, and Google just came out with one. It's called Google Optimize. Oh, yeah, Google Optimize 360, I believe. I'm sorry? Yes. It's in beta, but they do have a free version that you can use. And as of this time, it's actually pretty open. I don't think it limits you on how many you can do. So it's you can do a lot of experiments through it. If you talk to Devin over at Bluehost, he actually has used it a few times. He's actually here at the Bluehost booth. Him and I were talking about it at WordCamp New York just the other day. and he loves it. He was showing off the tool. It's a really great tool. So I would highly recommend taking a look, but on this talk, we're going to go through, I think we're going to run through Optimizely, but all of them work very similar. So just realize the one I'm running through is just the one I chose when I made this presentation, but there's other ones out there. So to run a test, you just have to add a very small snippet of JavaScript to your site. You just put this inside your head section of your website. You can have your developer do this, or you can go in yourself and do it. It's pretty easy to do. You can go to, a lot of times your theme will have a setting for you to do that, or there's a plugin called, it's called Header and Footer. And you can put that on there and add code into the WP head area. And what they do is they create an easy to use WYSIWYG. So this is FuelZ. This is a site that we were working with on testing. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to test this button down here. It says Learn More. This button's on every page. It's on the blog pages. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to test this. If you notice, it's kind of hard to see, but if you notice over here, this is when you right-click on it, we get this pop up. And then what we can do is we can actually go Edit Element and Edit Text. And it's going to allow us to edit text to this button. You don't have to be a developer. If you're doing more advanced tests, there's some things you can do with some JavaScript and jQuery with it. But if you're just looking to do some basic tests, you don't have to be a developer. You can go in here and just click on these elements and change colors, change text, change all these things just by clicking on these items. So when we clicked on that, we could change the button. That says Buy Now. I know you can't read it because it's really small. But it says Buy Now. You hit Done. Boom. You have a test ready to run. We hit Go. Now it's live on your website, and this is tested on your website. Some of your traffic's getting this version. Some are getting this version. One of the biggest reasons why we want to run A/B tests through a tool like this is we don't want any outside factors to change. Some people go into your site and they run 1 week, they run one test variant. Next week, they run a different one. Well, you don't know what happened. You don't know if somebody posted a blog article or if someone posted you on social media, or it's the week of Christmas or everyone's doing a Christmas shopping this week and not last week. It's not the same data. What this does is pretty much every visitor that comes to your site, if you have a split 50-50, one person comes to your site, gets this, next gets this, and it flip-flops as it runs its tests. And it uses a really complex mathematical equation to figure out if it needs to serve another one to prove a point. And it comes up with it has a crazy algorithm how it serves it, but it will serve it evenly to make sure you get the right test results. So on this test, for example, by switching it to buy now instead of Learn More, which again, this is a free product, there's nothing to buy. That's what makes this really funny. And Buy Now won by 21%. And there's nothing to buy on it. It's free. And we actually tried download free or something like that, and it didn't work as well. I don't know, people wanted to spend money. And so when they clicked Buy Now and it said sign up for free, and that might be it too. And that's where we talk about looking at our data. It might be because they hit Buy Now and it said it was free, and so it got them more excited about, oh, I'm going to sign up for this now before they start charging for it. Or they thought they hit a bug and they were going to try and get it ahead of time. Whatever, it worked, right? 21% increase. So the biggest thing when it comes to testing is figuring out what to test. So we tested that button. And you're probably asking, well, why'd you test a button on a blog page? This is why right here. Because we SEO'd these different articles. And as you can see, I think this is over a month's time. Most articles, 31, 31, 40, 40, they just really weren't taking off. This top one, 19,000 people a month were coming to that article. I don't even know what that article was. Let's see. Does my car make a squeaking noise when I drive? Might want to go talk to a mechanic, but I don't think you need to worry about fuel at that point. I think you need to go see somebody. But that's the page we want to test because that's getting the most visitors. We don't want to test one of these pages that's only getting 30 people because it's going to take forever to run our test. So we're going to test these pages with the highest traffic. These are our 2 highest traffic pages. So I'm going to actually run the test on both these pages because I kind of want to see how it works out with both of them and see if one of these articles gives me different results. So what do we test? We also test buttons. So this is just changing button color, right? Simple. There's nothing else that really changed in this. We just changed the button color. and I had a 21% increase with the variant. I do want to warn you before I go, I'm going to go through a couple of these examples. Don't take this and go change all your buttons to red on your website. What I want you to take home from this talk is go test your website. Don't just go change something because I told you that this website performed better by doing this, or this website performed better by changing to buy now. Every website's different. I've had websites where the same thing I did for one actually hurt the other website. We had one where we created really nice looking pricing tables. It was a credit card merchant here, and we created really nice pricing tables and everything, and that converted much better, which we expected it to. And then we had a website for developers teaching them how to code, and it surprisingly didn't, when we made it look better, make it look pretty, it dropped the conversions. Developers like things ugly. So that's what we learned from that. Test images. Barack Obama's campaign was the first big campaign to really go into the digital marketing space, which a lot of people lead to why he had such great numbers in the election. Even during the primaries, he had lots of analytics running. Every time you went to his website, he was A/B testing, well, his team. I'm sure he wasn't sitting there doing his own tests, but you know, he had his team testing you all the time. The Donald Trump campaign, actually, there was something, and I'm trying to update my slides to have this in there, but they did a lot of A/B testing as well, which a lot of people attribute to their success as well. I saw a special on 2020 or one of those with the guy who did this, and they did a lot of testing as well. But like with this one, you have one with Barack Obama kind of focused on him. You have one with him sitting with everybody. And the one with him sitting with everybody converted better. And this is, you know, we could try to figure out why, and I actually learned from, and he's actually doing a talk similar to this a little bit later. But Dwayne is giving a talk later on this, and he says, don't ask why, just take the test in. I always try to figure out why. I try to analyze it, but it doesn't matter why, right? It's converting better. We're going to test layouts, so switching things around. 52% conversion rate on this, 22% on this. Does not work on every blog. Kissmetrics blog, we ran the same test on their blog. Funny enough, on the left converts way better on their blog than on the right. But different ones on the right will do better than the others. So again, test them. Test your different flows. So your sign up flow, first user experience. When do you send the welcome emails? Do you send it right away, or do you wait after someone signs up for something? Do you give them a little bit of time to really dive into your product before you send them an email to thank them for signing up? When you promote upgrades or paid features, if you're doing like free trials. And then this is my favorite one, test the money pages. So we're going to test where the sales are happening, right? So the biggest thing is, let's think outside the box. Let's turn this guy into a hipster, right? All they did this test, they put a fake beard on here. And now y'all are about to find out why I have a beard. Because the hipster won. Yes, 49%. So this is why I have a beard now. But yes, think outside the box when you're doing these tests. Have some fun with these tests, you know, really dive in and see what you can do.
So your sales went up 49%.
Yeah, it went up on that particular shirt. Don't screw up. I love this picture. Epcot actually recently did this after the hurricanes. It's kind of a fun thing. Anyone who's local here saw it probably all over the news. Epcot replaced their signs after they got blown over from the hurricanes, and it was, instead of Epcot, it was ECPOT. And they put this up on the road, over the big road sign over everything, and it was up for about a day until people started tweeting it everywhere. And the news came out. I mean, there was news trucks filming. It was a big, huge thing. And Disney came out real quick and took it all down, and fixed it. And I'm sure that person probably doesn't work there anymore, but unfortunately. Stay focused. Don't do a bunch of tests at once. This is the biggest thing I always say. You don't know which test is going to cause, you know, if you're testing 3 different things on the page, you're not going to know which one of those things increase the conversion. So you want to kind of mix it up a little bit and not do them all at once. If you have low traffic, I always say 5,000 page views per variation that you're doing. So make sure that if you're going to have a bunch of variants, you have a lot of traffic. And that's 5,000 minimum. You may not get it on every single one. Low traffic, just do an A/B test. Don't do an ABC test. You want to get significance. There's a bunch of significance tools out there. This is a really easy one. Make sure you actually have significance, don't just look at the numbers. You want to run these numbers through. It's a mathematical equation, but instead of trying to do the math yourself, just plug your numbers in. You'll see, and it'll tell you that your results are, they'll say it's 99% certain that this test worked. You want to be at about a 97 to 99% certainty rate. Double check amazing. Sorry, I'm kind of going through this fast. We're getting close to the end. So double check the amazing. So if you had 956% increase, you're probably going to get a promotion. But you may want to just double check that before you go and brag about it, because you might have messed something up. So double check that and make sure there's nothing wrong. And that brings us to the end. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. So I'm going to open up the floor. How long do we have for questions? Okay, we have about 20 minutes. We got plenty of time for questions. So yes, I saw your hand first.
Yeah. When you're doing these A/B testings and you're talking with the client about this, because the biggest obstacle, of course, when you're doing web development or web design, is the client thinking they know how,
Yes.
they want their website to be, but when you're trying to convince them and you're doing these A/B testing, that you're, well, one, how do you convince them to do an A/B testing so they don't freak out when they see the two different things going on? And then also, how do you convince them afterwards that the other one works and not maybe their ideal?
Yeah, so her question is, how do you convince your client that this testing is something that you should be doing, and how do you convince them that your results are accurate? So this is, when we talk about getting yourself into the CRO mindset, you got to work with the client to get them into the CRO mindset. Show them some of those different, you can go on, I think it's actually a site now that actually has a bunch of A/B tests that were ran and people show off their results. Show them these different results. Show them, that this is going to work, that we're going to run this test, and because you're only running it on a subset of users, you're not going to hurt their customer base. You're not going to hurt their sales. But you're going to actually, in the long run, hopefully increase your sales. I mean, you talk about, that 49% increase. Tell any company that you can increase their revenues by 49%, they're going to love you. The other thing is using the numbers, showing them the numbers of how it worked. Once you implement that test, they should start to see their numbers go up anyways. So it's just really kind of generating that trust. You may have to have, if they don't have that trust yet, try to build it with them. Show them past work you've done. Show those different types of things, and just really try to make them feel comfortable about it. Kind of almost like what I did in this talk. Do a mini talk with them on a call and just kind of explain it. So, yes, Alfonso.
What you're doing is without respect to time. But many times, like you have a holiday season, you have seasonal changes. Does the ABC testing show different results at different time periods? Or is it a constant sort of
Unless your test is directly, he's asking time frame, when you should do the tests, right? Should you do it during a holiday season? When is the best time to do these tests? I recommend not doing the test during Black Friday sale if you're a retail place. Because if it goes wrong, it can go wrong really bad. It can be, and during your up times, because the problem is you may also have people coming in to make purchases who have been waiting all year to make this purchase because they're buying it, they're buying Legos, your toy shop.
The question is like during Christmas time, would a green button be better? But during the summer, maybe a blue button.
Yeah, so you can run tests if it's related to the season. You can run those tests. Just realize you better have a lot of traffic because those tests are going to have to run quick for you to get a good answer. I only would run tests related to the holidays, and I'd be very careful and really test the different variants and make sure that they're 100% working, because you don't want to lose out on sales, and pay very close attention. I would also recommend, if you have enough traffic, to run it on a subset. Most of you, I don't know who here uses the Facebook app on their phone, Android or iPhone. You're being tested every time you go in there, and I'm sure you've every once in a while seen a change happen, and then you go back in like 10 minutes later and that change is not there anymore. One of the things is, when you're running those tests, you've got to look at they come in, they have such a huge user base, they can run a test on less than 1% of their users, and in 5 minutes have completely significant results because they've tested so many people in that 5-minute time frame with only hitting 1% or a fraction of a percent of their users on their app. I wish sites I ran tests on I could get results that fast. Usually it takes a couple weeks to get results, but when you have bigger sites, you can run tests. I've had a site where I could run tests and have an answer in 2 days because it had enough traffic. So it really comes down to traffic when it comes to that. I really would focus if it's related to holidays to see, but I would be very careful at the same time because there's a lot of variables to come in. You know, when Black Friday rolls around, everybody's whipping out their credit cards and buying everything. You don't know if they really cared what color the button was. They're just going to buy one way or the other. So your results may be a little skewed. So just, you know, take that into account that it may not be 100% correct. But if you are running tests just for general tests, try to run them during just normal times so there's not any kind of crazy spending going on. So yes, I think I missed one over here first.
Yeah, how do you charge your clients for CRO? Is it for a separate line item? Do you do it as part of a quarterly review?
Usually it's usually a separate line item, but it just depends. You can build it into your packages. He's asking how do you charge your clients for this? You can build it into, depending, I mean, we have certain clients, we have custom scopes built for them, so we'll sometimes include it in the scope and it's part of, you know, the pricing, or sometimes it's an extra hourly fee. It just really depends how you're set up to bill people. So I'm gonna go with him right here first.
What are your thoughts on installing the scripts for the tools directly into the site versus using Google Tags? Does Google Tags slow things down?
Yes. All right. So he's asking, should you install it through Google Tag Manager or should you install it directly on the site? Okay. Most times I would tell you use Google Tag Manager for everything. I actually was hoping to get my Google Tag Manager talk here this weekend. But in this case, Optimizely and VWO will not work properly with Google Tag Manager because they need to load immediately when the site loads up, or you're going to get that flash look where you see the one page and then it switches because it uses JavaScript to switch. So you want it to load first before anything else loads on your site so that it switches everything as your site builds rather than showing them one thing and switching to the other. So in this case, you would not use Google Tag Manager. I don't know with the Google Optimized product if it's been built, because Google makes most of their stuff work with Tag Manager, so that one might, you'd have to check the help files, but I can tell you VWO and Optimizely tell you do not use them with Tag Manager. So, sir.
You talked about when people leave the site and doing a survey to find out why they left for sales or whatever the case is. How do you tag those people and then get them to take surveys if they've already left? You pop up the survey. You can have it where you can do an excellent intent pop-up. So when they go to move out of the browser to switch tabs or close out the tab, it pops up. You can either pop up a sale item, for example, or you can just pop up a survey and ask them, hey, is there a reason why you're not purchasing? You know, and you can ask that way. That's usually the best way. But if once they've left your site, you've lost them. Unless, you know, yeah, you pretty much lost them.
By calling them.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned if something's working well for one site that don't question it. And I completely respect that. I think there's value in not spending too much time trying to understand every single thing that works well and what doesn't. But then in your example, you know, you have one thing that works well for one client or industry and it doesn't work well for another. So I guess I'm just curious as to like what would that balance be? You know,
So as you start to run, she's asking like kind of with the different industries and such, when we talked about the different tests, she's asking about how do we decide which, or if we're going to apply information to a different industry. And
just like questioning it, like knowing when to say.
yeah, questioning it. So one of the things, as you've done, there's certain things that almost always work. So you start to learn that. And so those are usually my first tests I go after. But kind of what I was saying on that was, even though it's worked for 5 others, you still don't want to just automatically. I do have a client that I am doing that with right now because they're trying to
best practices for their Thanksgiving sales for their Black Friday. They don't have time to do testing. And so I'm doing an audit of their site and saying, based off of me doing this for all these years, this is what I would recommend, because in most cases, I've seen this work. But there's also a little disclaimer that says, however, it may not work for you. So if you do implement these before Black Friday, it could hurt your sales because we didn't have time to do a proper testing period. So it's one of those, you can use those best practices, but at the same time, I would still recommend testing them before you implement them. Yes, ma'am.
So just more to add to everybody, there's a site used to be called Which Test One. It's now behave.org, so you can see different tests and do A/B testing. They come in your inbox, you can see how you do in the quiz. And kind of in response to your comment too, is if you're saying earlier, when people were looking towards the image versus away, it's a great example of odds are that's going to work on your site regardless of what industry you're in with your picture. So there's a really tried and true method that's through. Sometimes the coloring theory is another one we're doing, but in most cases, I mean, I've done it on education sites where you had almost exactly the same for one school it does not convert, for the other one it does. So you can't always take it to 100%.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I was just curious, we talk a lot about A/B testing buttons, images, and whatnot. Have you ever done any testing on personalization, and do any of those tools support that?
So you can test personalization. You could write custom tests with JavaScript inside there, so you would have to work with your backend developer to create the personalization, but create it with a
Tools like Qubit or similar like that?
I was using those tools. You'd have to look into them and see what kind of integration they have with A/B testing software and see if they can integrate. I don't know if they already have a piece built in for it for testing with those, but just look and see if they have a third-party integration. You can even just test turning it on and not turning it on as a variation. That's a possibility as well. And that can be done through like just a JavaScript variable or just 2 or 3 custom lines of code to turn it on and turn it off for others. So, and the key is with the other thing with tests, when you do run a test, your tests will stick with you on your cookie. So as long as they're not clear in their session, usually when you're running these tests, it'll stick as long as they don't clear cookies. I think it's 6 months out. So if you're running, you shouldn't be running a test for 6 months, but they should always get the same variant, so it won't switch on them. Now, granted, if they go in an incognito window, they go through a different computer, they may see a different variant. So just realize that they're not. It doesn't actually know that individual person coming. So I'm gonna grab one here in the back first. Yes, sir. So that's what I was talking about. I normally see it around 5,000 page views. So it's hard to tell you exact timing. Like I said with Facebook, they can have an answer in less than 5 minutes. Some sites can take a while. But if it's a pretty clear answer of who won, who didn't win, you can usually do it within 5,000. But if they're running very close, it could take a lot more page views. So if they're running very close and this site doesn't get a whole lot, and you're looking at it, and it's going to take, 3 or 4 months to win this test, and they're both running very close, maybe you just go ahead and that's when we're talking about having that backlog. Maybe you just cancel that test and you move on to another test, and you focus on that and instead, because when you have low amounts of visitors, you really want to go for those big tests that are really going to give you that big win, because at 5,000 page views, if it takes you 3 months to get those, a small percentage, fraction of a percent change really probably is not going to change your bottom line that much. So that's kind of how I would recommend that. 5 minutes, okay. Any other questions? Okay. Just to let you guys know, lunch is going to be right over here in the dining hall. We are kind of splitting lunch. There's 2 sessions. So there's going to be over in the back cave, which is the auditorium. Yes?
It is.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you.